I'll now call this regular workshop meeting of the Jacksonville City Council to order. We have a copy of the agenda for tonight's meeting, and there's a change in one of the number 3 in the consent items also. I want to point out that 2 of the items that were originally on the list that you saw to begin with are coming off, and we'll deal with them at the next council meeting.
So move with changes as presented.
Also, we're going to add, let me add a closed session discussion on some more property added to the other one, and then you'll include that in your motion at 208 through 212 Newbridge Street.
Move approval with the changes as presented with item number 3 under consent item and the closed session. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. We have minutes from the September 17th, 2024 regular meeting with the 8 consent items.
Move to approve the minutes with the 8 consent items.
Second. Have a motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. We'll go down to this discussion item number 9, and this is the housing policy, and Tracy Jackson, our neighborhood services director, will be presenting this item. Tracy.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. We're going to continue our discussion from the last meeting with Development Finance Initiative regarding the development of our housing policy. They're going to be bringing us information about Jacksonville's housing needs assessment. So without further ado, we're going to be bringing up Sarah Van Leer, Marcia Parrott, and Frank Morocco of Development Finance Initiative with Chapel Hill. You can see Chapel Hill, so come on up.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you all for having us back. We'll ask to come back again in November too, but it's good to be here today. Appreciate y'all taking the time out of your schedule to talk about our housing market and needs assessment. So we'll spend time on that today. We'll continue our discussion from last time about your housing priorities, and then review some of our next steps for our next meeting in November with you. So last time you all were engaged. You gave us a lot of questions and ideas, so you set the bar, and we are looking forward to a lot more engagement today around all the information that we have for you. I'll spend just 2 seconds on this. I know we introduced ourselves last time, but for anybody who wasn't here or for the public that's watching, the Development Finance Initiative is a program of UNC School of Government. And we partner with local governments all across the state to help them bring about transformative real estate projects that are meeting their community needs and the public interest that they have in their communities. So that's why we're here. I'm joined by Marcia and Frank, and we're excited to dig into our presentation with you today.
Do you think you'll be involved in any of the recovery? Is that something that y'all will probably be spending some time next year on? Or?
We have many projects, many partners in Western North Carolina, so definitely engaged in conversations with them now. It's a little too early to tell how some of those priorities might shift or exactly our role in some of the ways that we've been working, but our plan is to definitely continue to partner closely with our colleagues in Western North Carolina, help them figure out a lot of their next steps that are ahead on a pretty long-term recovery, which you all know about really well. So, yeah. This is just a quick reminder. I know we spent a lot of time last time talking through our full scope in detail, but for today, we are focused on our housing market and needs assessment findings. That's that first kind of core element of our work with you. Integrated and kind of interwoven through what we'll describe in our findings is the feedback that we've been receiving from stakeholders. So trying to provide not just numbers, but some more qualitative nuance to some of the findings that we're seeing in your housing market. And then the last 2 items, site identification and the high-level site and financial feasibility analyses, that's what we'll be coming back to you with in November. So So I'll just kind of kick off our housing market and needs assessment with a note that's not surprising. Jacksonville's housing story is, of course, very closely intertwined with the military bases that are here, New River and Camp Lejeune. You are the home to the second largest military community in North Carolina. So, of course, the military has an impact in a variety of ways on your housing market. As of 2022, you have approximately 47,000 active duty members here in the community, with approximately 6,000 civilian employees. I'll just note, when I talk to stakeholders, this number to them was underestimated. They quoted numbers that were much closer to 80,000 military members, and not only civilian workforce, but a growth in contracting workforce from a lot of the infrastructure repair and new construction that's happening on the base post Hurricane Florence. So these are the most recent numbers that we have, but we've heard kind of along the way that they're potentially somewhat underestimated. So the defense industry here really is the driving force, not only of housing, but certainly your economy as well. So to kind of dig into a brief bit of that picture, the defense industry is obviously kind of an outsized role in the area, but you've also seen growth across a variety of other industries in the area. In fact, the region has grown by 9% since 2021, which has actually outpaced the state average. You've added over 5,000 jobs. Outside of the military, you have major employers such as the Onslow County's Board of Education, retailers like the Marine Corps Exchange and Walmart, as well as the healthcare industry, so Onslow Memorial Hospital. Now, wages for these employers range pretty widely. For example, if you were going to be a civilian employee on Camp Lejeune, there's a position for a police officer that starts at $40,000 a year, all the way up to a psychiatrist there on base that's over $120,000 a year. So there's a wide range in those opportunities. Overall wages have increased in Jacksonville. However, a significant portion of your workforce is still making lower wages. So for example, 1 in 10 of your employees here in the area works in the food industry, making approximately $25,000 a year. Your top 15 occupations in Jacksonville, if you kind of pull all those together and get the median wage, that's approximately $37,000 a year. And this is cooks, cashiers, elementary school teachers, nurses, kind of a whole variety of occupations. So while the economy is growing and wages are growing, that your kind of core of your economy is still based in lower wage work. So with that snapshot of the economy, I want to talk a little bit about how the military is impacting the housing market. Between 65 and 75%, according to stakeholders that we talked to, of enlisted members and their families live off base. So a significant portion of those in the area looking for housing off base. And what we're seeing here is a chart that's showing the track of the basic housing assistance that military members receive to support their housing-related expenses while they're stationed here. On average, the BAH is 25% over the average rental rate in Jacksonville. What we're showing here is a Marine Sergeant with dependents. The BAH that they're receiving is about 10% above that average in Jacksonville. So this is a very reliable and steady source for your market to count on. This is unique to Jacksonville. Most communities experience kind of much wider shifts and changes in their housing market based on much more wider shifts in housing-related income that people have to spend. The military is kind of such an influence on the housing market that it's also influencing current rehabilitation efforts. So these are just two examples of recent renovations that we're marketing directly to military members, highlighting their proximity to Camp Lejeune. And alongside the rental market, the military also has an influence on your home ownership trends as well in the area. So the majority of new construction is happening in unincorporated Onslow County and is really focused on single-family homes. Enlisted members, kind of looking to buy a home, not only have the VAH as that kind of regular source of housing income, but they also have access to VA home loan financing. And again, kind of going back to some of the local brokers that we talked to, upwards of 75% of the single-family homes that they're seeing sold are being financed through VA home loans. So big presence in the rental market, big presence in the homeownership market as well, providing that kind of consistent source of resources, equaling a lot of stability from that side of the demand in the local housing market. So we've talked a lot about the military, but I want to talk a little bit about the bigger picture. Alongside this military influence, there are other defining features of Jacksonville's housing market. One is its competitiveness. You can see here that your vacancy rate is consistently low. Right now, it's approximately 4% in the rental market and approximately 1% for home ownership. We tend to think about a healthy vacancy rate at around 7% to account for natural turnover and the ability for people to find new options and new living situations when they want. As you can see here, these data estimates are from 2022, so we did dig in a little bit to what kind of variability is happening right now in the market. So we looked at a couple of multifamily complexes, and variability in the market now brings us back to the military. There's consistent changes that happen with military members, right? They come in for a while sometimes, but sometimes a pretty short amount of time. So vacancy rate can spike pretty quickly in some of these multifamily units and then go kind of right back down to a low level. We've also seen kind of a lot of variability in some of the lower quality, we call them Class C rentals. And we've heard a variety of things from staff and stakeholders on the reason for that variability. Some of that has to do with long-term, kind of maintenance challenges that those landlords are trying to address. We've heard, for one property, there was a fire. For another one, there were some mold challenges. So there were kind of a number of different reasons why that vacancy rate was up and down for those particular properties. This can force some of your units off the market, right, which is then keeping that vacancy rate low and the competitiveness high for renters and homeowners out there who are looking to find housing. Sorry, a little bit of, slide translation. Hopefully you can read that. We're looking here at the number of units that are vacant and off the market. That has doubled in Jacksonville over the last decade and has grown by more than 2,000 units in the county overall. And that includes municipalities that are not Jacksonville. Now I want to note here, I know I have a picture of an abandoned town center apartment. Off market doesn't necessarily mean abandoned or condemned. It can also mean that there's a property that's off the market because maybe it's an heirs property that's caught up in some legal next steps, or maybe that property is in the midst of repair and renovation, like the example that I showed earlier. So this isn't kind of the one and only quality measure in your market. We also try to think about other quality measures like age. And in Jacksonville, the median owner-occupied home was built before 1980. So a decent amount of your stock is on the older side compared to Onslow County, for example, which is 1999. So paired with these data, of course, we also talked to local stakeholders in the area, and they certainly cited quality as a challenge and an additive to the current market constraints. They kind of noted that new housing units are needed to lower the difficulty that they're seeing for both homeowners and renters to find a viable housing option. Of course, layered on top of this and not to be missed is the impacts of Hurricane Florence on the Jacksonville housing market. Over 5,000 owner-occupied damage claims were reported by FEMA as a result of this storm. Rentals are a little harder to track because it's up to the landlord to submit those claims, but FEMA did also report over 800 renter personal property claims. So this had a real outsized effect on your housing market. And again, the brokers that we've spoke to really point to Hurricane Florence as this tipping point in what they've described as a current housing crisis. One example, one of the stakeholders cited a kind of more direct example around this, which is pre-Florence. At any given time, there would be about 3,000 houses on the market for sale countywide. Now, on any given day, that is at most 800. So just a real lag in the recovery from the damage that this storm caused the community. So housing demand, as we covered, is impacted by the low vacancy rates, the accessibility of quality housing and Hurricane Florence, and kind of the last major defining feature that I wanted to bring up is residential permits in Jacksonville. What you're looking at here is the residential permits over time from 2006 up until 2022. So despite kind of the job growth that you've seen here in Jacksonville and the reliability of the housing demand through the military, residential development hasn't kept up. It's really lagged over the last decade. Jacksonville's total inventory of housing units has grown by just under 3,000 units over the last decade, despite kind of the job growth, the resident growth, both in Jacksonville and in the county. According to the census estimates, just to kind of give a little bit of proportions to this, Jacksonville has permitted the same number of units as Swansboro and North Topsail Beach, despite having about 10 times less population. So just to kind of put that in a little bit of perspective. For homeowners, as I mentioned earlier, most of the new supply is being built outside of the city. This is where 2 out of every 3 new homes is being permitted currently. And for renters, really the portion of lower quality multifamily units is over 50% of the current stock. And that's because there's been very little delivery of new multifamily units over the last decade. In fact, the most recent 2 were Springfield Park Apartments and the Crestfield Apartments that just opened this past May. Those are 2 low-income housing tax credit projects. So we spent a little bit of time talking about that last time I was here. We'll talk about that program more as we talk about specific sites next time we're here. But those are the 2 most recent apartments that have been delivered in the last decade in Jacksonville. So paired with the current status of the housing market, there's also future demand to kind of think about and consider. So here in Onslow County, over 8,000 new homeowner and renter households are projected to move to the area in the next 5 years. Jacksonville, of course, has its kind of share of that expected growth at upwards of 1,700 households in the next 5 years. So if we were to center in on those homeowner households first, what kind of market would they find as they move here? The market, as I mentioned, is delivering new single-family homes. However, they tend to be outside of the city, and they tend to be larger, 3 to 4 bedroom homes, 2,000 to 2,500 square feet, and on average are selling for approximately $350,000. This is affordable to a household making around $100,000 a year, so not affordable to your current kind of core workforce and the jobs that are on average available here in Jacksonville. As you move towards the coast, homes are priced even higher, coming in at on average around $500,000 in places like Sneads Ferry and North Topsail and other communities along the coast. Now for renters, what kind of market are they going to find? Over half of Onslow County's rental units are concentrated in Jacksonville. So unlike homeowners that have kind of a variety of options in Jacksonville and outside in the county, renters are really mostly going to be looking in Jacksonville for those rental options. And certainly this is difficult given the vacancy rates and the growth in off-market units that I described earlier. So just to kind of briefly summarize, I know it was a lot of different kind of points of information, but our main kind of findings in the current housing market is that the military households make up the primary demand for new and recently renovated units, those higher quality units here in the city. Single-family homes in Onslow County really represent the largest amount of residential development, and really kind of limited new residential development in Jacksonville specifically. You've seen a growth in vacant and off-market residential units, which was certainly exacerbated by Hurricane Florence. And you have projected household growth that will likely put further pressure on Jacksonville's already constrained and competitive housing market. I'll just pause here for a brief moment before we transition to some of the next slides, just to see what kind of questions or thoughts are brewing for you all.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Before you, Sarah, I think you may have to go back 2 slides. I think it was the 2018 Hurricane Florence. Yes, that one. Has not recovered from Hurricane Florence. Do you believe possibly one of the reasons why we haven't really seen a rebound is that maybe for homeowners, either that did not have home insurance, if their houses were paid, or if the policy did pay, but they decided to take the money and basically leave out of the city, leave out of the county, which has now led to the decrease of houses on the market. Is that a possibility
I
that
think
has
there's
legs?
any number of those possibilities, 100%. I think there's a variety of different aspects and choices, right, that people have after their home is destroyed in a natural disaster. And so I think that's very possible. We'd have to dig in and look at some of the maybe in-migration and out-migration numbers to really understand maybe to what degree we could see if folks were, potentially moving out versus who's been moving in. That's maybe one way to get at it. I don't know if there's other data sources that you can think of.
I was thinking about it, the population of the county grew through 2018. So even after the hurricane, it continued on growing. So we didn't see a population decline after the hurricane. But I think what Sarah has been showing is that besides just the movement of people, the housing stock itself was very impacted. Like you can see it in the quality that's available today, the number of units that are vacant and off market. And those are all kind of showing that the housing stock itself has been really impacted by the storm. If that gets at your question a little bit.
Well, one thing I noticed on my side in the construction world is a lot of people that didn't have flood insurance. So a lot of people had homeowners insurance, but because the water rise, the flood got them, and then they didn't get coverage. So then they had financial burdens on top of it because they couldn't, and their regular homeowners insurance wouldn't fix anything for them.
A lot of that area can't be built on again, correct?
Correct. And then that's a lot of things that happen, like Bayshore right there, like this house on the right side. I think they just got torn down, didn't they? Or in the process.
Shoreline.
Shoreline, that's what it is, Shoreline.
You're right.
16 units we purchased and tore them down.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's a lot of areas like they're on creeks that were like, high now, which you never think, oh, I'll never have flooding issues. Then they did, and then
Yeah. And you don't want to put your home back there.
then they can never rebuild.
Yeah.
Because then you have those issues.
Have you all tracked the number of homes that renters might have been in, but they couldn't stay because they were sold because of the prices and, the opportunity to get your home, sell homes at a higher price?
No, that's pretty hard to get to on a micro level unless we were, kind of really essentially calling, to understand the ownership change and price change all at once. But, yeah.
Because I've talked to several that was the issue.
I mean, this is the important part of talking to stakeholders that we've talked to, right? Because we, most of the time, because you either know the folks or you know the market or you know the person that happened to, the more kind of input and information we get on that side, we can begin to understand some of the why behind the numbers that we're seeing. So I think that's a very real possibility.
To Councilman Jackson's point, I do part-time inspections for a property management company.
Yeah.
And they're after Florence, and we went from where we had a lot of folks, military, couldn't sell their home when they left, and so they put it under property management. And then as the Florence afterwards and started to absorb all of that, and more people needed a place to go, a lot of people were selling their rental homes because they were getting good money for them. And so I would run into somebody say, do you know whether the owner is trying to sell this house? Is that why you're inspecting? No, this is a routine inspection.
Yeah.
But I did talk to a couple people who had moved 3 and 4 times because their house where they moved to got sold because the market was so hot for homes.
Well, we heard too from a couple brokers that in some of those situations, maybe a military member becomes an unintended landlord, right? Like they bought the house.
Right, yes.
To your
That
point,
happened a lot.
couldn't sell it immediately. So trying to make some income on it right in the meantime, and then when the market was right, certainly
We're
trying to
down.
offload.
We're about half in the number of houses we had from a property management pre-Florence.
Oh wow. Okay.
So.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that the permitting, that slide, the one you just popped
yeah.
in, that 2006, I don't know how far back that day would be available, but the trend has been downward consistently, well before Florence and COVID and crazy. I know that, the city obviously only has so many square miles.
Sure.
So we're sort of like an island, we're landlocked. We
Yeah.
can only grow so far horizontally.
Yeah.
Are there some other factors that you saw in there that contributed to that consistent decline? Is it largely due to this simply land mass available? Or are there other factors?
I can address the 2006 to 2008. That was the city's special order by consent. We were under with the state when we didn't have sewer capacity.
Oh, okay.
And then you can see immediately after that where we met all the requirements and we ramped back up.
But then,
Then the legislature
Well, and then that
did
was
away
the downturn
with
in the
involuntary annexation, and so
yeah.
the only way we grow now is if somebody wants our sewer capacity, or tap into the city sewer and development.
Gotcha.
Peak in 2010 ties to 202K. There was a lot of hype
That's right, grow the force.
in 2007 about the additional Marines coming.
True.
And so there was a building, and then that led to people moving out that couldn't sell.
Right.
And that's, there were a lot of houses out there. So, yeah, that's part of what we went through in that period of time.
People were getting out at the same rate that people were moving, so you didn't really have that buildup like you thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Were you about to add something?
Oh, just there in a lot of communities, they saw a downturn in construction after the 2008 recession,
Yes.
which is very much a recession in the housing market. A lot of developers went out of business, so we see that a lot
Yeah.
in different communities.
And certain.
Yeah, we were sort of opposite that because of that growth. Where in 2008, we hit a low point primarily because of availability of sewer, then the 2002 growth,
Yeah.
jumped up.
Up to probably 2008 or so, we were local builders. When we went into the recession, we were the only one of the few communities nationwide that was still growing because of adding the military forces.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting some national builders actually, or at least regional builders come in. Now we've got 1 or 2 national builders. So.
Well, I think today the development climate is so challenging that some of those either broader regional or national developers are really kind of focusing on where it's easiest to build, right? And Jacksonville is not immediately easy from a number of different reasons. I think you hit on one, which is, certainly you're constrained by the land mass that you have, but also kind of thinking through, some communities take particular actions to lower the barriers to entry for developers to kind of encourage in a lot of different ways through process points or permitting points, or when it comes to affordable housing, financial support to kind of incentivize and support and kind of bring as many people as they can to kind of signal that we're open for development and encouraging of it. So it's hard right now to be able to kind of navigate the difficulty. I mean, if you're in the construction world, you know that pretty well.
Because, the growth in the county has continued. It's grown pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
Onwassa can't keep up. That's our water and sewer authority, countywide.
Yeah.
Can't keep up with the demand. It's just way behind, and it just takes so long, as you know, to plan for that kind of stuff. But I think we're seeing a little more interest in land adjacent to Jacksonville. I don't know how many we've got housing developments that are planned. There's at least 5 or 6 that have petitioned for
We definitely saw quite a few,
so they can have access to the sewer, because the county sewer is not keeping up with the growth, and probably maybe won't for a long time if we continue to grow like this. So.
Well, we definitely saw a few in the pipeline.
I'm thinking that you're going to see our housing start make an uptick, because we do have, I don't know, how many do we have, 5 or 6? Yeah, I know you keep up with it pretty good.
Ryan sent some input in that 2008, 2010 timeframe. We actually approved 5,500 multifamily units, of which 4,500 were built. But that's back to you. We haven't seen that same
since then. Yeah.
But all those new developments aren't going to fall into low-income housing. Most of them are going to be 200 or higher. So
potentially.
Yeah.
And the shortage has really felt its impact mostly on your lower income, because landlords realize they can charge more even for substandard housing, and as Councilman Jackson pointed out, we're pricing people out at the lower end of the market.
Well, you have a whole chart on that too. You're right. There's been a decline in the most affordable units. Remember last time we talked about the kind of naturally affordable units versus the subsidized kind of capital A affordable units. Your naturally affordable units have decreased by 40% actually over the last decade. So we're seeing that happen, and your most expensive units on the flip side are increasing.
And throw in the inflation that we had in the last 3 years, and it really impacts those folks.
Yeah. Well, that is the perfect segue into kind of who is kind of most impacted by this constrained and competitive housing market, and that is your low to moderate income households in Jacksonville. So 43% of your households, or approximately 8,700 households, are low to moderate income in Jacksonville. And just as a quick reminder, I know this chart will feel familiar from our last presentation, but over on the left-hand side, you have the area median income percentages from 30% up to 80%, so that extremely low income up to low to moderate income. And then across the top, how that income changes according to your household size. One of the things that I'll kind of pull our attention to is that 4-person column. And that's because the majority of your low to moderate income households are families here in Jacksonville. And the median income actually for a single earner family household is between that 50 and 60% area median income level. So those are kind of important numbers to kind of track and think about. You'll remember this from last time too. not just numbers, but who are kind of in these jobs making the income that makes up these income levels in your community, from a waitress up to an Onslow Memorial Hospital nurse. That second line there is what that household could afford to spend on their housing-related expenses to not experience housing need, spending more than 30% of their income on household-related expenses. I will say that need, as a reminder, that need definition is both the expense, spending more than 30% of your income on housing-related expenses, but it's also a measure of quality. You may be experiencing housing need because you're living in poor quality or overcrowded housing. So those are a number of different ways to think about need here in your community. Over 6,500 of those low to moderate income households are currently experiencing housing need. As you can see, for owners, the majority of those are families, with more than a third senior households experiencing need. And then for renters, close to 75% of those experiencing need are families. We talked a little bit about this last time too, but just kind of as a quick reminder, that need definition can kind of grow in severity. And so if you are a household that's experiencing severe need, so 2,000 approximately of your low to moderate income households, that means you're spending over 50% of your income on housing related expenses. More than 750 households are, you'll kind of remember this scenario from last time, are in this situation. They're making approximately $23,000 a year at that 30% AMI level. They're navigating close to probably $1,300 in rent, leaving them very minimal amount of money, approximately $600, to really take care of their food, their transportation costs, healthcare, childcare. I don't even know how you'd even think about childcare with that much money left over. But this is a very real kind of reality for households here in Jacksonville as they're navigating their day-to-day with their income. Now, to your point earlier, a part of this need comes from the fact that affordable rentals have declined over the last decade by 40%. And kind of on the flip side, rentals that are $1,000 or more have doubled over that same time period. Here's just kind of a breakdown of how that translates across Class A and B, those kind of higher quality rentals, versus Class C rentals, those lower quality rentals. Across the board, the cost of those have increased by 35% just in the last couple of years since 2020.
Partly what's driving that too is insurance. Every time I own some rental property, and every time I turn around, every year I'm getting a property insurance increase.
Yeah, that is definitely what we've heard and seen in the data. I'm trying to remember now.
It's going to get worse.
Oh, it's in here. Insurance costs rose 40% for Jacksonville zip codes.
Yeah.
And
just think what they're going to be asking for. The rate bureau, asking the rate bureau next year, is that because of Helene, and it's just going to put more pressure on everybody.
Well, and that includes homeowners, right? To be able to afford a home, just a couple of years ago, you could technically afford a home and make approximately $30,000 a year in Jacksonville. Today, you need to be making closer to $65,000, $66,000 a year to be able to comfortably afford a home.
In 3 years.
And just in 3 years, yeah.
Wow.
Now, the rates are hopefully going to continue to come down, so maybe this picture will get a little bit better. But, thinking about that constrained housing stock, if you can afford it, there also becomes a question of, is there an available house for you to buy? And right now, your vacancy rates are so low that there's a lot of competitiveness in the housing market as a result.
Well, just for the workforce side of people, if they're struggling to pay all the necessities, right, for them to put away $17,000 in cash,
right,
that's going to be very hard. And it's hard. I mean, obviously we love the military and all that stuff, but it's hard to compete against that because those people can go get the VA loans without putting very little to them with zero down payment to a person that doesn't have that, they'll never be able to compete for that.
You're exactly
I mean,
right.
it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, we need the military for a lot of different things, but it's also hard for people that are not in that world to ever get a house if we're in the housing stuff. So makes it very hard for them.
I know there are programs with down payment assistance, but other than the VA home loan guarantee program, are there other programs with you have to no down payment?
There are quite a few programs. In fact, your neighborhood improvement services colleagues here are running quite a few of them to support homeowners to be able to afford that home, to put less money down up front, and working through options to forgive certain portions of that so that they're not finding themselves at the end of their mortgage with a balloon payment that crushes their ability to stay in that home. So your folks here are kind of thinking through each element of that
Just
process.
shedding some light on it.
Yeah, just trying to shed some light over here. But you're right, there are programs. I think, the ideal is to expand and grow those programs and the accessibility of those to your Jacksonville residents. Yeah. So just to kind of bring us back to a summary, your economy and your housing market is really kind of driven by the defense industry. Your labor force has grown. These are great things. But despite this growth, your housing supply has really lagged over the last decade. So housing development rates are at the scale in Jacksonville for cities that are about a tenth of its size. And you haven't yet recovered from kind of one of the biggest natural disasters that you've seen in recent history here.
And nothing compared to what the folks in Florida and Western North Carolina. I mean, we had flooding, but not to the destruction that they've had.
Well, it's going to be so much less expensive for us to build back than what's going to be built in the mountains. I mean, it's going to be astronomical for road infrastructure versus not even the housing part, just to rebuild their
Just the
areas.
infrastructure piece.
We're 6 years on. And they're worse. What's going to, you look at Florida and they're going to get whammied again here in the next couple days, but 6 years has taken us to get to where we're at, and we've still got some issues.
Some people that displaced, so that money's not going to go into that community from the individuals that's moving as a result of it. So it's just
I think you'll see an exodus of it.
Yeah,
People are
that's
just
what
going
you're
to
gonna
abandon what they have and then just try to regroup somewhere else.
Potentially, yeah. They're up against a very long road in Western North Carolina. Yeah. We've been discussing along the way, but any kind of additional questions that are popping into mind for you all?
I have one. Maybe you and your team have heard about this. This actually came to light after your first presentation that with the North Carolina General Assembly, House Bill number 556 prohibits city and counties from passing or enforcing local ordinance that prevent landowners from refusing to lease property to people who use federal housing assistance programs to help pay their rent.
I have not seen that.
That actually came out like 2 days after you guys gave your presentation last month.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting.
That would be
if
really interesting.
You can bring us further information.
Absolutely, yeah.
North Carolina House Bill 556.
Where's it at in the process?
It passed through the House. It was vetoed by Governor Cooper. It was overridden by the House, so it should be in the Senate.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll check into that in more detail.
Because that would
Track it.
definitely affect that 30%, that real
Extremely low income. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're about to increase the homeless population. So what's going to happen? And then we got people that's just coming from different places already.
Yeah. Potentially a shift in those projected household growth numbers. Yeah. These are just a couple of, you all have been great. You've kind of met the standard that you set last time. You've been discussing and asking questions, but curious if there's anything surprising or unexpected or or findings that you feel, you've described some stories along the way, so it sounds like this is some of what you are hearing from your residents, but any kind of other anecdotes or surprises?
What do you hear about these small houses that are popping up in different communities?
You know, we've heard a lot of advantages to having a variety of housing sizes that are going to meet different needs depending upon your household size and also what you can afford. A smaller home, particularly, I mean, one of the things that we'll want to talk with you all in more depth about are ideas like cottage courts, where there are a variety of household sizes, some of them being pretty small, with shared amenities so that you as the homeowner aren't kind of taking on the full cost of the maintenance for, you know, the entire maybe plot that you have, but that's a shared resource and a shared cost for the community itself. We'll be kind of talking more about one of those examples. I think there's, you know, a lot of potential to those strategies, to infill development, to kind of meeting needs across a variety of, again, household sizes and income levels.
One thing you'll see a shift is people, you know, in areas get older, you know, people downsize, so they get rid of the bigger houses, they go smaller. That's why you also have a surplus in mini storage, because then people want to go smaller, but then you put all their junk somewhere.
They're not ready to get rid of their stuff yet.
They don't want to get rid of stuff they've had for 30 years.
Yeah.
So, like, but it is kind of crazy to think
That's why all
about.
those storage places are popping up.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah. I'll never forget the one getting built right in downtown Durham, and I thought, oh, why are you putting so much storage right here? But there's a demand for
It's
it.
cheaper than building onto your house or buying.
Yeah.
I'm hearing the cottage houses, as you say, they're actually able to withstand storm impacts a lot better than what people think as well.
They're talking about what, 1,000 square feet, Brian, something like that.
Something like that.
900 to 1,000. Yeah.
Well, people don't want the big home maintenance. I mean, you get the bigger house, the more stuff you got to do, paint, wash, you know, electric bills, I mean, utility
Yard to
bills.
mow, bushes to trim, and
Yeah.
edging to do. And
Right. There's a lot of advantages.
that comes back to the density conversation to some degree. You know. If you only have so many square miles, you either have to go up, which isn't practical here, or reduce the amount of size.
Fit more on what you got. Yeah.
Now you've got me looking forward to what your solutions are.
That's for sure.
Potential solutions.
We have some ideas for you,
You've done a good job of laying out the problem and the lack and the need.
Yep.
So
Yep. Well, we'll be excited to
Yeah.
come back with some
we probably
ideas.
didn't have the statistics, but the anecdotal evidence, we know, just out in
Seen
the
it.
community, we know that what's going on, and we get good feedback from our staff and so forth too, so.
We
Absolutely.
have a lot of proposed or housing units that are going to be built here, but again, they're trying to hit that home run too. They're not
Sure.
looking for affordability. They're
Yeah.
looking for profit.
There's a lot of ways to tackle that affordability question, so we're excited about our next conversation. Did you have-
And I was about to say also, and please forgive me if you presented this information, also in this particular city, we have a lot of individuals who are deciding to live their retirement years here. So I would be interested in seeing something as it relates to senior living, the options. You're not necessarily going to a living assistance program, but you want your very own. And with you downsizing, what does that look like? I remember when I lived in Denver, actually with the Denver Teacher Association, there was a high-rise apartments that teachers, actually retired school teachers, that's where they spent their retirement years. They sold their homes and they lived in a high-rise condominium in the city of Denver, but that was part of their service back to the school district that they worked in, but this is where they spent their years. So it would just be very interesting to see housing availability specifically for seniors, because we do have a large senior population that lives here in Jacksonville.
You do, and and that makes up, kind of the need. Back to one of the charts that we had on there, you do have senior households that are experiencing need now, and so what does that look like to kind of get them in a home where they are not spending more than 30% of their fixed income? That's not going to change with a new job, or not going to change, with I mean, I guess potentially with added earners in the household, but if they're trying
Or
to.
don't have enough money
Or don't have.
with their monthly stipend that they're receiving retirement
Sure.
to barely afford someplace comfortable to live.
Well, I appreciate that reminder. Last time we talked about, you all did bring up affordable senior housing. You brought up affordable family housing. You brought up mixed income. You talked about wanting to see deep affordability, supporting those that are really on the edges with their income, and an interest in thinking about both rental and home ownership options. I just wanted to spend a little time today curious if there are any other priorities that we didn't talk about last time that you want to talk about today, maybe like local partnerships that are a priority to you, or if there's a geographic focus that's really important for us to be thinking about and paying attention to. There could be other, these aren't the only two, but just want to open up and make sure that we are hearing from you on your priorities at this stage, and if there's anything we've missed so far.
There was there's a need for low to moderate income housing, but there is also, what was that, the assisted folks who need assistance even to live in their house.
Assisted living.
The peer-supported people.
Yes.
Peer support, okay.
Supportive housing. Right.
Yeah,
And having that building community where they have all the resources around.
Yeah, I don't know what that need is. I don't know how many units that might be, but there is a need.
I appreciate that, yeah.
Not a mental illness, disability.
Yeah.
Can you please clarify geographic focus?
I bring this up because in some communities, councils will have, in this particular part of town, we want to, it's right on the transit line, or it's close to jobs. We need more affordable housing where people are working, so they might really want to think about a particular neighborhood or a particular area of their city. That might not be true here, but I just bring it up in case there is a priority that relates geographically to Jacksonville.
I think that's why that town center, getting that thing squared away and organized, because it is in the center.
Number one, but
Because of people that can't afford all the other stuff, most likely they don't have cars to get places to work, and I mean, that's like almost in the center.
Exactly.
And that's why a lot of people were there in the first place, because they had access. They could still get to places in the city.
even though that ended up moving out, they lost their food source, their supermarket and so forth. And
Exactly.
even the shopping went away, quite a bit of it moved out.
That's helpful.
Town center has been a very traumatic
Yeah.
experience, not only for the residents, but even for us.
We have felt that in all of our conversations.
We felt it.
You have no idea how bad
We
it
have
is.
no idea, but we have been hearing it in a lot of ways about, how to think through those next steps. I know it's really caught up right now in a lawsuit, but yeah.
Our hands are tied right now, have been tied, but we were doing the best we could. And, you said housing needs are not just cost, but quality. And the quality was so poor in there that
That's right.
that we did the right thing, even though it's been tough.
We had 350 families staying in there.
Yeah, it's been tough. I pray we didn't create any homelessness out of it. We certainly tried not to, but
Yeah.
I want to hear about more programs for homeowners that are willing to create low to moderate income housing.
one of the
Lease
things
the properties.
One of the things that I remember under Clinton's administration, they really pushed home ownership, and they ended up really putting people in houses that they really couldn't afford, and there was a lot of issues on that, and so that's something to be careful. I know we have the housing program where they actually have to go to school and learn a little
Through
bit
each of
about
those
that.
elements. Yeah.
And so does Habitat for Humanity. They make sure that their folks are schooled and knowing what to expect. So that's an important component too of home ownership.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of those concepts we heard last night at the community meeting that was for Belfork Homes, was the fact that the houses we're building are roughly $200,000, and the 55 to 60 people there that were there last night, they hear that number, and you're taken aback, because you talk about that as being something that we can help someone get into it. And like Sarah added and Tracy said over and over, if you get into that property but you have a balloon payment, even for the items that you're forgiving, if your total assistance is $50,000 and after 30 years you still owe 15, 20, like Mr. Sosa is saying, whether you pay that on the front end or you pay it on the back end, but the back end means catastrophically you could lose it. And so those are the challenges so that goes back to Mr. Jackson's point, things we want to hear about. There may be a lot of programs, but balloon payment programs go back to this concept. If they lose it at a later age when they may not have the ability to create that income, then I'm not sure it's a good program. And so we have to navigate through the programs that we're putting out because our goal is getting people into quality housing. That's step one. We can't think about jobs and everything else if we don't have housing. And those are the challenges. So hopefully we have more of that information that comes in the overall picture because we want to make the right decisions for multiple people in the community. Absolutely. And those programs have to work. They can't just
long-term.
Yeah, they can't just throw opportunities at
Can down the road and then blow up later.
It's horrible to have that process come back and
Incomes may rise, but still you don't know how jobs are secure now. And then they're getting older at the same period.
That's right.
You know, so
And expenses will not stop rising either.
It's not gonna stop.
That's right.
Thank you all. We, as I mentioned before, our next steps will come back to you with our site and financial feasibility findings, talk through some of the ideas we have on the next steps you can take, those kind of concrete potential decisions you can make to help think through and get in place, hopefully more affordable units on the ground here in Jacksonville.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
As always, we'll be back, but please feel free to reach out if you have other thoughts or questions that come up in between now and when we see you again. We would love to hear from you anytime in between now and then.
Thank you. Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
This one will talk about another transformational habitat restoration grant.
Y'all heading back home tonight?
That's right.
Safe travels.
Thank you so much.
Safe travels.
See y'all soon.
How about you?
Like a new bypasses.
Oh, am I supposed to do that?
They say they on the dot.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it goes.
Where all your money goes?
It goes from tree 12 all the way around to the door. Oh, he cut all of that off.
All right, Pat, it's all yours.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present for the engineering division. We're very proud of our accomplishment. We are asking for you to accept the award from the NOAA Coastal Resiliency Grant. The grant itself is $16 million. That is not a typo. And the $16 million is going to cover 5 separate watershed projects. All 5 of the watershed projects will improve flooding, help with water quality, as well as access. And we'll go through all 5 projects with maps. They include Sandy Run Branch, Phillips Park, Northeast Creek, Scales Creek, and then, of course, my favorite, the Oyster Highway, Phase 4. The NOAA grant was so high because NOAA has always been monitoring the city of Jacksonville. The city of Jacksonville has been very innovative in their forward thinking and cleaning up the environment, or more specifically, the New River, starting with the Wilson Bay Initiative. Not very many municipalities get to brag about what mayor and council did some 20 plus, 25, 27 years ago. Going to land application was also a very, very favorable move on your parts. So NOAA has been monitoring the innovative thinking and all that has occurred here. And when the Wilson Bay Initiative was originally going to be funded, we applied to NOAA. We were right on the cusp of being funded, but because no one had ever cleaned up a polluted body of water before using bivalves, they were like, what if it doesn't work? So once they realized it does work, they came back to the table. And one of the reasons why we were so fully funded, we were one of 2 projects that got almost exactly what we asked for, was because our approach is from a watershed perspective. All 5, you'll see all 5 of these projects are interconnected. What we're going to do is just zoom in on the New River itself. Up in the top left-hand corner is the city of Jacksonville. You can see there's a blue star and a yellow star that says Jacksonville. The farthest point in blue is our Phillips Park improvements, and then beside it is Cheney Creek watershed improvement. If you come down to the word Onslow, where the bridge is, to the right of that, you actually have the Scales Creek watershed improvement, which is right next to Ellis lift station, and over that whole watershed drains White Street and our industrial area, which actually was built pre-stormwater rules and regulations, so there are no control measures in that area. Stormwater runoff from that area is high in pollutants, and it comes at a very fast pace.
That goes into Northeast Creek.
And then to the far right in purple is Northeast Creek. We all know what happened with Northeast Creek with Hurricane Florence, but we'll show what we're going to do in just a minute. And then finally, the red stars coming down the river, there are 12 of them, is the Oyster Highway. Remember, all 12 reefs are an acre in size, and we will be adding, and we'll talk about that because that's my last one. So the first one is the Sandy Run Branch watershed improvements. Is during our last hurricane, there was a lot of water coming from Sandy Run Branch, which goes all the way up to Western Boulevard. And that amount of water coming from the impervious surface area actually ran across the road at Onslow Drive, because it dips down. So it actually blew out a lot of the embankment on the side. That area was flooded. And of course, you do have the apartments on the downstream side. So what we're hoping to do is actually increase the floodplain so that water has somewhere to go other than across the road. So we're trying to, again, address flooding situations. As you come down Sandy Run Branch, it comes around the corner and joins with Cheney Creek, which is again off of our main pump station, and you see our elevated storage tank there at the bottom with the wetlands down below. We will be improving not only the floodplain, but putting in wetlands as well. Wetlands are what we refer to as sponges. Not only do they soak up water, but they also soak up contaminants. And so the more floodplain and the more wetlands that we can put in, hopefully that's less water in somebody's yard or somebody's business. The next part is the going underneath the Highway 16 bridge into Phillips Park. There is one remaining section of seawall that's about to fall into Cheney Creek. So we're going to go ahead and remove that seawall so that it's safe for all of our citizens to play and fish. And when we do that, what we're going to do is regrade 3-to-1 slope and grass it down to the water's edge. Then what we're going to do is actually build a pier, a fishing pier that runs out onto the water and parallel to Cheney Creek. And then what we will do is put flowering plants in floating wetland planters on the front side. You'll see them in little green boxes to help with water quality, but it actually will put the fishermen out into the deeper channel of Cheney Creek in order to fish. And it will also be safer for children, because right now the seawall is one per child, so to speak. if y'all have questions, you know you can stop me at any point too. And then Northeast Creek Park, Michael's in the back. We are going to remove the remaining of the dilapidated boardwalk, which was really one per child. That was something fun to walk. And once we remove that, we're going to restore all of the wetlands behind it. Once again, we're going to build a new pier out into Northeast Creek, run parallel to Northeast Creek, and then tie it back into a new constructed boardwalk on the back right-hand side. Now, the reason why this boardwalk and pier will be a little bit different is it's actually going to be made out of the slatted concrete so that we add weight. So that during a storm, when you have water rising, it will go through the concrete, through the slats, and it won't have as much lift. Then to assure that we've added weight, what we're going to do is put a living shoreline, which I forgot to mention at Cheney Creek. We're putting a living shoreline attached to the base of each one of the pylons below the slatted concrete boardwalk. So we're adding weight to resist floating. And that living shoreline, while we won't be putting oysters on them because Northeast Creek is too fresh, once we build it, what we have found is that 3 species of ribbed mussels have moved in on their own. So if we build it, they will come. That will also not only add weight to that boardwalk, but it will also add higher filter capabilities of the organisms, improving water quality. We will also do a living shoreline in front of the bulkhead on both sides of the boat ramp, again, to protect it from future storms. Doing the same thing is the concrete slatted concrete in front with the weight on it will take all the energy from the waves, whether it's from a boat or from a storm. Instead of impacting the seawall, it'll impact the living shoreline.
It's so amazing what nature would do if we don't screw it up.
I'm going to leave that one alone. I can't talk about that on TV. And then finally, Scales Creek. Again, it drains a lot of White Street in our industrial area, which again was pre-stormwater rules and regulations. So a lot of water flash floods down Scales Creek, which actually goes under 24 and across base, and it enters Northeast Creek. For Scales Creek, we actually had applied for another grant that we didn't get. So what we're trying to do with this one is actually come up with a shovel-ready engineered project and apply for chunks of money as we go in order to finish it, because Scales Creek goes all the way up to 17 almost with the bypass. And there are actually 3 streams that feed into Scales Creek. And so we're going to try and address each one of those. And again, what we will do is A, try to increase the floodplain, B, try to give it a greater storing capacity by adding additional wetlands. With this, though, not only will we come up with an engineering plan for all phases, we also are going to address the bridge in front of Hardison Hills and try to make it higher so that during some storms, not all storms, that community can get in and out of their neighborhood. We also will realign the stream underneath the bridge that we're making higher, and we'll put more wetlands on the backside for holding capacity. And again, as we get more money, we'll go from the bridge and we'll move up. And we had hoped to go for some FEMA funding, but right now I think the western part of the state needs all of that. So I think most of that's going to come to a halt, and understandably so.
We had some sewer lift station problems down in that area at Florence, didn't we?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It all impacts on everything. impacts on the apartments, impacts on our lift station. And we've done with FEMA funding,
690,000, I think.
we basically moved controls and the ability for the pump station to operate when it's flooded and that, so, yeah.
And then finally, the component that ties it all together is water does not start and end in the city of Jacksonville. It starts and ends in Onslow County. So cleaning the waters as it leaves Jacksonville to move further down the river only improves our watershed. The Oyster Highway project will have phase 4. And again, each one of those red stars, starting up at the top is site 12, ending way down right above Stones Bay is site 4, 7, and 8. Each one of these reefs are an acre in size. They are made up of lots of different types of substrate reefs. What we're actually going to do in phase 4 is load all 12 of these reefs with as many smaller reefs as we can. The oyster castles, to be specifically, those were the concrete Legos that you can interlock so that they don't go anywhere, even during storms. We had originally left rows longitudinally and horizontally so that we could walk up and down in order to monitor recruitment, settlement, but also the fish. We now know that they've been very, very, very successful, so we're going to fill in all of the rows horizontally, longitudinally, and around the perimeter. And then what we'll do is add 3 million oysters over the next 3 years, so that for decades to come, no matter what happens, the river can rebound.
So does that protect them from the sheep's head?
No, it does not. The castles do.
Is there a final solution for that?
Well, and that's why we're choosing the castles versus the catchers, is with the 2 interlocking on the top, it creates cubby holes. So when we put the live oysters in, we put them in each top of the castle in the cubby holes. So the black drum and the sheep's head and the blue crabs can only get to the ones on top, per se. Because we don't put little ones in, we're now at the point we're putting full adults.
Have you been contacted by oyster farmers? I know it's big down in Moorhead where a lot more people are getting into oyster farming. And they're buying acres, on the water to do oyster farming. And, that's a big growing business in that area. I didn't know, have you been contacted for this area to do that?
So every one of these reefs, because the Oyster Highway has been fully funded by private donations and grant money, 100%, we've put research sanctuaries on all 12. So while you can take the finfish, you can't take the bivalves or the oysters, because what we want is for them to spawn and then all of their spat to go everywhere else. And what we have found for monitoring, and UNCW does all our monitoring, is the river is becoming saturated because they're finding oysters everywhere now. All along the perimeter. If you've got a rocky outcrop or a pier, they're finding oysters where we've never found them before. But the Oyster Highway is part of the North Carolina Oyster Trail. And so October is actually Oyster Month, as designated by the governor. And that's one of the things that we're also promoting is our Oyster Highway as part of that trail, is we actually, when requested, will take people out to see the Oyster Highway just to see what's happening, because most people don't understand.
Would like to do that too.
Anytime.
I'd like to see that.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Before it gets too cold, though, and just so soon, or springtime. So we do collaborate with our local oyster fishermen, and because of the reefs that are at the lower portion, closer to Stones Bay, which is Sneads Ferry, our older, fishing community, they have also seen an increase in the oyster population in the area. So what the city is doing is helping the river as a whole. It's a watershed approach. Do you have a picture of the trout? Not on this slide, no ma'am. I'm sorry. Do you want to tell them about the trout? So one of the very first students that did the Baykeeper program with us back in 25 years ago, Meredith Morgan. Her dad is retired and is an avid fisherman. And at the Environmental Appearance Committee, I showed a picture of him with a sea trout that's this big from site number 12. He had to put it back, it was so big. So his favorite reef, fishing holes are reefs, and I've heard that from quite a few local fishermen. And you just have to remember that it was devoid of habitat because of years of the wastewater treatment facility putting out soft organics. All of that settled out and covered your hard substrate. And so there was nothing for the oysters to settle onto because they're a sessile organism. They can't free float. They have to attach to something hard. So by putting this substrate out there and then adding live oysters to it, we're adding both worlds of, Wow. Thank you, Lisa.
Lisa's good.
Dang, she is good, isn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
Asking you shall receive, Dr. Washington. But that is the sea trout.
Too big. It's too big to eat.
Too big, yes. I had to release it.
Oh, my goodness.
So, thanks, Lisa. Thank you. Any other questions? So I'm excited about the prospect. It's a 3-year project that may extend into year 4. As soon as you decide to accept the grant, we get $8 million up front, and then in the spring we get the other $8 million. There is not a city match.
Now, is this going to go on the agenda for the next meeting for acceptance? Or?
We're ready to move.
Okay.
Can I say something, ask you another question, Ms. Donnelly, before we take the vote now? At the Environmental Appearance Group, you mentioned something about another $1 million, so this program was actually a $17 million?
No, 15 million went to the other restoration projects, Sandy Run Branch, Phillips Parks, Scales Creek, and Northeast Creek. The $1 million went specifically for the Oyster Highway project.
Perfect, okay.
Okay. With that, we need a motion to
Grant? So move. Second.
This is a motion to accept the grant, right? Not just to apply for it. We've already applied for it.
Yes.
To accept the grant.
And there's also a budget amendment and a CIP amendment. All 3 of them are asked for council's approval.
You all 3 of them approved. Is that all right, brother?
Yeah.
So moved again.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have a second?
Bob, second.
Any further discussion? All right, without any discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay.
So when we going on the field trip?
That's up to her. She's going to have to cook it up.
All you have to do is tell me when, I will make it happen.
We've been working on that for a while now.
30 days you're going to be wearing weight.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow.
You want to go with these creek?
Yes, it's coming in.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Good job.
All right, with that, I think that concludes what we have to discuss here, and I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. We're going to discuss some land acquisition at 360 acres off 9 Mile Woods, and
Mayor, do you want me to do the one city now before you go into close?
yeah,
Good with that?
go ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
Got it out of place.
Hate to cut you out of getting that going.
Don't forget where I was at.
I know, you just start pick back up from there. 2 comments before we start in. 2 comments from both Tracy and with Pat. I think you're seeing tonight some of the excellent work that our team's doing, and I just appreciate council allowing this team to move forward with multiple projects. It's hard for you to have to juggle these projects, but I hope you see the confidence in the team that are leading them so that they are making really good decisions. We're on the housing. It's a huge project on these stormwater improvements and these system improvements. To get that type of funding is a huge deal. And that doesn't just happen, and it doesn't, as Pat said, it's not just going to come to us because we're good people. It comes from the work that you've done historically and the work that the team's still doing to move it forward. So I say that back again to echo both Tracy and Pat of thanks for that level of support to make these things happen. You're going to see multiple positive impacts moving forward. So, Mayor, we do have a couple of items that we wanted to bring to your attention for our One City Moment. National Night Out was last week. National Night Out is an event for us to bring our citizens closer to our police officers. For us, year after year, it is an awesome event that you see. The magnitude is greater than most communities across the country. Right here, it almost looks like the way it's set up that Crystal Blockett and the mayor are singing a duet. I'd pay to see that because Crystal's really talented at singing, and I'm sure the mayor can hold the microphone.
We'll soon go to the recording studio.
Anytime we can start out with our people being able to sing and appreciate, that's a positive thing. There's Chief Phelps give a kickoff. This would have been his first start for National Night Out, and you'll see here we actually retired one of our canines. So it's an awesome event because our canines are officers for the city of Jacksonville, and so to allow a canine to retire is it's a great opportunity for us, and to do that ceremony at National Night Out shows our community the value of the canines to our team. And some of the stats that were read on that night for that canine are beyond impressive. He's definitely done more work than a lot of people can do inside of a career in terms of total context. Right here you see the 2nd Division Marine Band having a presence. You see our fire department. We had our telecommunicators, we had our police officers, we had New River, Camp Lejeune, multiple community members out and about for the night. And this was a rainout date on a school night during school year with sporting events happening and other community events happening. And the turnout was fantastic. There's our sheriff. There's multiple officers showing that interactive community spirit that we're so proud of. And better yet, it's smiling faces. Also, our people, not staged to smile, but just smiling because they had a great night out and about. The second factor is what we were talking about a little before the meeting. We do have a lot of Helene response happening right now in Western North Carolina. We're only focused on Western North Carolina because those are our neighbors. We're not focused on some of the devastation that's happened in Florida and in Georgia. We're focused all of our efforts here. We're going through the United Way and through Chief Tallman to make sure that we can provide assistance. You're going to see some of our crews here, our fire department sending teams to Saluda. What you see is crews of 4 that are going to Saluda because that's based on the state response system, and then we're swapping out one crew with the next crew. We only have so many police officers, firefighters, public works employees that can go out and provide this assistance, but we can send a crew, and for us, it's a responsibility to the other 550 municipalities in the state. For us also, in and around the area, we're sending some of our police officers to the city of Asheville, which is in Buncombe County. Some of you may recall that Buncombe County's county manager is Avril Pender. She worked for the city for a while, so she's near and dearer to our hearts than some others that we may not know. But part of their training is to go out and help save lives. I don't think their training for our fire department included climbing up and down mountains, hooking people up to helicopters, hiking through the trails. So no matter how much training we're going to do, it's not going to be what these individuals are experiencing now. So just know that when we send these emails out, we're sending our people to help in this process. You see Chief Phelps here with, I believe, 8 of our officers who are going to Asheville. We're going to rotate those as well. The amount of staff and personnel that we can send is limited, but it's a huge impact. One of the challenges we have right now, as you'll see from some of those emails, is you don't want to send people without a defined need, so we have to follow that state emergency management process, and that's something that Chief Tallman's helping us as well. You see some of the equipment moving that are doing some of the rescue, recovery, trying to recover their systems as well as their people, their animals. This is a huge process for us. Wally has a team that he's working on sending now. He's also had assistance down to the south of us from the last storm event for Carolina Beach, Bowling Springs Lakes, Curie Beach, all these areas were impacted by massive flooding. And so for us, we're trying to be those regional partners that can help out whenever, because a lot of our people have that experience in dealing with storm events. And so anything we can do to help. You may see on the news, you may see our crews out and about. Just know that's our people, and we're going to take care of them just like we do everything else, but we're going to try and do our best to not inhibit our ability to serve our 72,000 citizens, but to also help those communities here in North Carolina that need it as we're moving forward. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, and we will continue with 400 North Bayshore Boulevard and also property located 208 through 212 New Bridge Street. And also we'll discuss personnel matters pursuant to General Statute 143-318. This time, we have a motion.
Second?
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, we're going to migrate to last off. All right. So we're back in open session, and in closed session, we took some action as far as...
We didn't take any action, but as far as...
We didn't take any action.
We discussed it.
We discussed many things, but I did want to say that we agreed to a consensus to do a 3% performance increase for the attorney and a 6% market adjustment for the manager to bring him up to market. This was based on a study that our Human Resources Department did. But those are both effective as of the first pay period in July of this year.
Need to get a motion there.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we put that into effect.
Did I get it all?
As stipulated.
Second.
You got that, Rose?
Yes, sir, I've got it. Thank you so much.
All right. All right, so any other discussion? You good?
Say, oh, I'm good. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so unanimous, and thank you very much. And now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Good night.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.